Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you're at, and we certainly anticipate you being on higher ground at mile high altitude where we are today in September of 2023, for September 21st to 24th for Mile High, where you will hear today's guest on stage. And she will be rising up to Mile High as we expect you to, and you can get all the details for that at riseuptomilehigh.com. The phenomenal Dr. Pamela Stone will be on the Mile High stage for her first time, and I'm really glad to have her on this particular episode as we will be launching the Mile High virtual pediatric summit soon. And so people will probably hear about that around the time that this podcast comes out. Dr. Pamela, for you to get to know her better, she has a family wellness salutogenic-based chiropractic practice in Georgia. She's been certified in the Webster Technique since 1999, and she is a 2000 graduate of Life University. She's an avid ICPA member and teaches for the ICPA. And she's an extension faculty of Life University, and she has her diplomate in Pediatric and Prenatal Care through the Academy Council of Chiropractic Pediatrics. And so this is going to be a chock full of information presentation today on this podcast and also from the Mile High stage. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Pamela Stone.
Thank you, Danny, for the opportunity. It's kind of crazy. I've been watching you guys for years, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to be finally up there on stage speaking. So it's a great
Isn't that exciting?
It is exciting.
Well,
like,
yeah.
You're trusting me. Hope I better do a good job.
Well, and Colorado is a great place to travel out to. As you know, you're going to be visiting on a vacation. You'll get multiple trips to Colorado this year. So this is pretty exciting.
It is very exciting.
People will get to know a little bit of the professional Pamela Stone, Dr. Pamela Stone in that. And let's help them get to know a little bit of the personal Dr. Pamela Stone. How did you find your way in the late 90s into the chiropractic world? I'm assuming it was actually before then, but that was when you were in school. So how did you find your way into chiropractic?
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent 8 years working in corporate America before, discovering chiropractic. Yeah, and changing careers. I was in the sporting goods industry. I had a very glamorous job working with professional athletes and sporting events and all of this stuff. And I really didn't like my job. I was very unhappy with it, trying to figure out what I was going to do. But that was just a side note. And I started getting headaches, and I thought it was stressful headaches from my job. And I knew a guy who was a chiropractor, and I'd been to chiropractors in the past, but I went for back pain. My back pain went away, and I stopped going. And so he convinced me to come in and see him. And I went in kind of hesitancy because I was like, I got headaches. You're not going to help my headaches. And within a few weeks, my headaches were gone. And I was shocked because I didn't know that's what chiropractic did. But more than anything, what he was telling me, the story he was telling me about chiropractic and the body and, innate intelligence, he just started telling me everything. And it made so much sense to me that I just fell in love with chiropractic. And ironically enough, he had me come to a health talk. He rented at a hotel, and Bob Sotilli gave this talk. So Bob Sotilli was one of the first people who really wowed me. So I feel very blessed to have listened to him. And then literally within a couple months, this chiropractor said, you should become a chiropractor. And I was like, why me? Like, why would I become a chiropractor? Like, that's not me. I'm a marketing person. Mm-hmm. And he literally gave me a packet of from Life University the next time I went in to get adjusted. And I remember going home and reading through the whole packet and calling my mom saying, oh my God, Mom, I finally know what I want to do with my life. I mean, it was that impactful. It was like, this is it. I mean, it just I loved chiropractic. I never considered it as a profession. But when I read through it, I was like, this is totally me. Like I was living that lifestyle, healthy lifestyle. And so more or less within a couple months, quit my job and moved to Atlanta and started chiropractic school. So it was kind of crazy, but it was it felt like the right thing. It was hard to give up everything and give up that job and literally start all over. But, I think that background helped me run my own business, just having the 8 years of business world. But really just how he introduced chiropractic to me. And he wasn't afraid to tell the story, and he just laid it all out. And so that's it. That's the long story short. But
I got to say that's super exciting. And I'm going to ask you more about that because This is an important area of people finding their way to chiropractic. What,
Right.
like, it was 8 years in the business world. So what age demographic were you then when you
I
decided
graduated
to go on that path?
22 to 30. So I graduated, college, age
Right.
22 or so. Worked in New York City for an internship for 6 months, and then moved back to the corporate world. So I was 30 when I started chiropractic school. So I was
Got it.
an older student, air quotes. Yeah. So,
But that was that sometimes people really find that the path that they're on doesn't have the fulfillment that
right.
they want to have from their work life, or doesn't fulfill them in purpose, even if it might be, you said, I think you might have said a glamorous, that might have been the word you used, position
Yeah.
in the sports field. Going into being a chiropractor now for 23 years, I think is the number, if I counted right, for 23 years. Where does then chiropractic now, you're in it for longer than in the past
I know.
occupational life. Where does fulfillment land with being a chiropractor now for you?
I mean, to me, I just love what I do. Like, it's not like I go to work. Oh, it's a hassle. I can't even never ever imagine retiring, because I love helping people. I love teaching now. I love making a difference. And it's just totally my lifestyle. I mean, somewhat of a second story to that is, I'm a big runner, marathoner, triathlete, everything. And I was training for a marathon the same time I started seeing this chiropractor. And I wanted to run the Boston Marathon. The only way you can run Boston is to qualify. And I had done marathons in the past, but was always getting injured. And so over the course of 8 months of seeing this chiropractor, I was training, and I ended up running a marathon, qualifying for Boston. And I realized that during that time of training, I never got injured. I never got sick. Whereas in prior years, I was always sick, always injured, always things setting me back, and I never really could achieve my goals. And when I made that discovery, that's when I realized the power of chiropractic, that it wasn't, even though I was training and running and doing the distance and speed work, chiropractic let my body be healthy and perform well and function well. So that was such an aha moment for me. So when I opened my practice, that was what my focus was, and is really on health and performance and wellness. And, now we say it's salutogenic, because I didn't even know the word salutogenesis back then, but then I'm like, that's who I am. That's what I do. And that's my message to people in my office every day. And I live that lifestyle. It's totally me. So it's such a natural extension of me as a human being to help people. The business part of it is great. I, certainly had experience working in that corporate world that helped, but I don't know. It's not a job. I mean, it is a job. I certainly need to work, but I love it. It's not, and just sharing my experience in teaching that salutogenic lifestyle is really, I think, impactful for other people. So,
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about pregnancy and pediatrics, prenatal care, and leading into it, since you mentioned that term salutogenic, and you term your office as salutogenic based care. Let's help the audience understand a little bit more of what that means. What does it mean to be a salutogenic based chiropractor?
It's really just the creation of health. I mean, that's what salutogenesis is. It's the opposite of pathogenesis, which is dealing with disease and pathologies. And salutogenesis is creating health and allowing a person to function at their best level. I mean, if you look at the Merriam-Webster definition of it, that's what it is. It's allowing someone at their innate capacity. And when I read that, I'm like, that's our word, that's a chiropractic word. So salutogenesis is probably what a lot of chiropractors do. If we say we have a wellness-based practice, but it's taking away from saying, oh, I'm going to take care of you and treat you for ear infections or a breech baby or headaches, and just take care of the person, their nervous system, allowing their body to function to their greatest capacity. And if they're functioning at their greatest capacity, they're going to be just a better person, better in any aspect of their life. And so salutogenesis is really that is creating health within a person, and everybody has their different levels of health, and there's certainly limitations that some people have, but if you can help a person be at their best, then that's what we should all be doing.
Excellent. And I'm glad you described that so well, because sadly, I think it's commonly known that the majority of chiropractic schools and students are graduating with an education, and the majority of the students in the world in a pathogenic model, and not even to get exposed to a salutogenic model. I think that's pretty safe to say that it's the majority of the schools, if not the mass majority. So I think that's important relative to what Mile High is about and what we want people to gain from the speakers on the stage, and also even just from the community of doctors that are there. Now, how did you end up involved with the pediatrics overall? How'd you end up being involved with the ICPA?
Well, pediatrics overall, I just always loved kids and knew I wanted to take care of kids and pregnant women once I started my practice. And so early on, within the first year or two, I reached out to a few doulas. I mean, this was like, before like 2003. So really before social media, internet. And I just started making connections with pregnant people in the birth professionals and started working with them. And then ultimately somehow got Webster certified, got involved with the ICPA, and served on, and still do serve on, the Academy board through the ICPA, which really oversees the certification and the testing process. And through that board, got to know Jeannie Ohm and really the connections through the ICPA, and just stayed always involved with the testing process and just kind of some of the background. I mean, I got through the certifications, the ICPA's different levels of certification. So I did all of that. I think being a runner, I have that competitive, background, runner, triathlete. And so doing the certification was just another goal for me to achieve. But it also really helped me learn more about the ins and outs of pregnancy and pediatrics. And so when Jeannie passed away, they asked me to fill in, which was a huge gut punch into some extent, because it was like, she's like, she was my mentor, just like Larry Webster was a mentor to so many people. I never knew Larry. He passed away within my first year of chiropractic school, so I never had that opportunity to know him. And when she passed away, like, she was my mentor. So it was an amazing honor. It still is an amazing honor. So, it took a while to kind of get in and fill those shoes. And so I'm teaching for the ICPA now, teaching the Webster Technique. And it's interesting because even though it's a technique, it's a really philosophically based seminar. I mean, so many of the comments I get from people is like, I didn't know it was this much philosophy. And if I'm teaching at a school that's, medically based, or one of those chiropractic schools that doesn't like the philosophy, you'll get, 2 or 3 students, or, their students who comment about, like, not agreeing with the innate intelligence and stuff like that. But I really bring in salutogenesis and philosophy into the care of pregnancy and pediatrics and stuff like that. Cause to me, that's what it's all about. It's what I live. It's not something I was taught. It's truly what I believe. So it's, so I've been teaching now for a little over 3 years. So it's kind of crazy, but.
So let's delve more into that. Before we delve more into that, let's just, to surface level, what are the things that you're currently teaching?
Well, the seminar itself is just perinatal chiropractic care and the Webster Technique Certification.
Right.
So that one
And
seminar,
then
I teach that for the ICPA, but that same seminar gets taught all around the country. So it's essentially the same seminar that I'm teaching all in different cities, pretty much once a month. I do update the seminar pretty much every month, and sometimes it's like graphics, sometimes it's new research and studies. So it's constantly being updated, but the bulk of it is how a chiropractor would take care of somebody who's pregnant through, day one all the way through. And certainly we cover the Webster technique, and that's one thing I think I may talk about when I come out to Mile High is, Webster and how it's different now than it was with Larry. I mean, Jeannie changed it, and it's now 6 adjustments instead of just 2. And so we teach the doctors that, and I really focus on being specific and not just, I say anybody can rub a belly and, adjust a sacrum and say they're doing Webster, but Webster is a lot more specific than that. And if they really go in with the right intent and focus and specificity, they can get really good results. So I get into a lot of that and the whys and how it can help and all the different things that can affect somebody during pregnancy. And then certainly we get into the pediatrics and the children. So that's really the main seminar. I mean, I go around speaking at other state associations and things like that, on whatever it may be, but it's really one seminar, but it gets tweaked a little bit every time.
Excellent. So prenatal care, taking care of women during pregnancy. So why is that, first of all, why is that important overall?
Because you're taking care of 2 people. Like, that's what I look at them like, you're not just taking care of the pregnant women, right? You're affecting 2 women. And birth trauma really exists in our world. I mean, so many babies are born in a less than ideal situation, whether they're pulled out by forceps or vacuum extraction, or just pulled through the birth canal, or it's a long labor, the woman pushed for, 3 hours or whatever it may be. And it ultimately is like, what's going to happen to these babies and how these babies enter the world. So really the bulk of it is why we need to be adjusting these women, why doing the Webster technique really specifically can allow a better environment for the baby to be in, because it's, we're not turning the breech baby. We're not turning posterior babies. You're providing a really good environment for the mom. And when I say environment, meaning her uterus, her muscles, her bones, everything is balanced to make a good home for the baby. And then the baby gets in the best position possible. And then ideally the baby has a better entrance into this world. And so that's, because if the baby has a better entrance into the world, if they're born, with torticollis or restrictions, it can affect it can affect everything for that baby. So you're helping the mom, but you're ultimately helping the baby. And that's our future, is when these babies are born into the world. If we can, adjust them and help them off to a great start in life, you're going to make a difference. And that's why the technique to me is so important. It's not just, laissez-faire adjusting it, but it's everything else that goes into that ultimately, because you're helping the baby,
Mhm.
and helping them.
Are there any particular stories, experiences, prenatal that are ones that you just stand out to you of really outstanding things that happened either in your care or in teaching?
Well, the good and the bad, it's, we teach it as the perfect situation. Like, this is the ideal situation during pregnancy. The woman comes in, whether she wants a home birth or natural birth. So we teach everything as ideal as it could be. A woman not going in with stressful situations, stressful emotional experiences, and then all the different hospital situations they're faced with. So we kind of talk about the perfect situation, but very few people have the perfect birth experience. I think Jeannie Ohm is the only one who ever did, right? And it's always sad to me when I talk about this, and then I have doctors come up to me and tell me they planned for a home birth and they ended up with transferring to the hospital, or they planned for something and they ended up with a C-section. So I'm always hearing stories like that. And I certainly have it in my office. And I think there's so many things that go into that. And some of it is fear. Like, you're like, okay, I can do this. But then deep down inside, you're like, I don't know if I can do this. Or outside influences getting in the way, whether it's hospitals or doctors or people wanting their way versus the woman's way. So we, I talk about all those, but I love it when, and I share some videos, and I love it when I see beautiful birth experiences where the baby's born into the world with no pulling on their neck, whether it's born in water or bed or wherever it is. And those are like so empowering to me. I have a little bit of a birth envy with that, but it is possible. And I think people need to realize that's possible if they're empowered, if they're not afraid, if they have a good support team, because it's not just the woman. Ideally, yes, she should be getting adjusted throughout their entire pregnancy to allow with a better experience, but she has to have a good support team, whether it's, partner, hospital, doula, whoever it is, and not be in a state of fear. And our whole world is in a state of fear, especially the past couple of years. And that's really affected pregnancy. That's affected birth. That's increased C-section rates over the past few years. VBACs, which is vaginal birth after cesarean, have decreased in the past couple of years, all because of COVID. So hopefully now we're changing the course, but I think people are just too stressed out. So I get into all of that, is how ways we can help them emotionally, but also parasympathetically. Like, what can we do adjustment wise to calm their nervous system through cranial work, Logan, soft tissue work, anything to really, get their body out of a state of stress from a chiropractic standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint, because they're stressed out, especially now. So, but right. I love hearing, I love it when, I have people texting me birth stories all the time or birth videos, and some of them I've been able to use in the presentation, and that's cool. So
now, unlike myself and yourself, as we know, it's vital to get chiropractic care throughout your whole life. Birth,
right.
As they say, womb to tomb, right? And through pregnancy, there are the people, the detractors that say people should not get care during pregnancy or should not get care as children, and that's usually they're from outside the chiropractic profession. What are some things that will help chiropractors be able to communicate the importance of that to the public?
There's, and I don't remember which book it is, but it's one of the green books, or Dee Palmer talks about adjusting babies and talks about the birth trauma and talks about adjusting babies after birth. And I have the slide in the show right now. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was from 1910. So, he was talking about adjusting babies back then. So it's not a marketing thing. Whereas people do think, oh, there's no science, there's no proof, there's no studies that you should be adjusting somebody who's pregnant. But it's been around for a long time. So, me just showing those studies, in pictures of BJ and D-Day adjusting babies, to me is a big thing. So I don't know. I certainly don't listen to the detractors. I know how much it can help. And at the same time, I'm not going to, if somebody comes to me and they question, because we do have certainly people who don't want their kids getting adjusted. They don't trust it. They want to see the proof. And of course, we're trying to find, that's why we support research. But if somebody really doesn't want it or trust it, I don't waste my time with them. Like, I'm going to focus my time and energy on people who want it and who believe it, no one's going to convince me that it's bad. Just like I'm not going to convince somebody that it's good who is completely closed-minded. So I think just the event results speak for itself. But I think you have to, you got to know what you're doing. I mean, it's adjusting a baby is not just a little human. There's so many nuances and things to look for. And the more I study it, I was just in a pediatric seminar this past weekend, 16 hours. And it's just like, here I am 23 years into practice. And I'm like, oh my God, there's still so much to learn. There's so much that we can help these babies. And it's just being there and putting the voice out there, helping, and word of mouth. And social media it's good and bad. I mean, some people come in and they think you're going to like crack their baby, like some of these crazy videos. But if you can share the beautiful ones, or they can see what you're doing and see that it's gentle and safe, that's really one of the keys is just word of mouth,
Yes.
talking to them and showing them how safe it is, and that it's in, testimonials and things like that. So
now you mentioned research, and you've been published in the Journal of Pediatric Maternal and Family Health, in the Annals of Vertebral Subluxation Research, the JVSR, Journal of Vertebral Subluxation Research Pathways. What can you talk about one of the studies that you published?
I've done several. One of the first ones I did was on torticollis in babies. And it was just, this patient I had learned how to write up the research paper. And I remember having the paper, and when my son, he was really young, I don't know, like 2 or 3, walking into the pediatrician, and I brought the paper in because I'm like, I want to show like, hey, here's some research. And I handed her the paper, and she looked at it and turned around and walked out the room. And I was like, oh crap. And she walked in like 5 minutes later, and she's like, thank you. We love the research. I just put you on our referral list. And that paper got me on the referral list. So I'm one of 2 doctors in this pediatric office, because that's what medical doctors like. You got to kind of speak their language. But the good thing about case studies is that they're relatively easy to write. You just write what you do, right? And then you can work to get it published. But that's what medical doctors do. So anytime I'm having a conversation with an OB or midwife or someone, or even a parent who's like, I want to see the proof, I'm like, you can't do double-blind placebo-controlled studies in chiropractic. It just doesn't work. It's impossible to be like, I'm going to fake an adjustment. I don't know if I'm giving you one. And you know what I mean? That just doesn't work. So you have to do the case studies or the RCTs and things like that. And I think more chiropractors really should do it because, maybe it is symptom based. You're saying, okay, I'm taking care of this person with XYZ, whether it's Meniere's disease or torticollis or ear infections or breech baby. But that's what, some of the times the medical doctors want to see that. I mean, ICPA does have some wellness studies out there talking about the quality of life for people who I think they looked at over 300 people who were under chiropractic care and how the adjustments improved their quality of life. It was a big study. And like, that's the great stuff. That's the kind of stuff we need to be promoting, but because that's the salutogenic way.
Wow. Right.
So doing the papers is good. Getting anything published, whether it's a research paper like that, or even in local journals and Pathways magazines. That's a great magazine, all about wellness and all about health and chiropractic.
So would you say, I'm confident you would say, would you say that people would be well advised to follow through with ICPA certification or ICPA individual programs to help themselves be more knowledgeable in this area? So I'm certainly biased in it, but I think so, because you're not going to learn
we say it's not the letters after your name, the certification, but you're not going to really learn it in chiropractic school. And taking the classes, especially the ones that the ICPA offer really the inside nuances and the tricks and the tips and the things of different situations that you're going to face. And it's really all comes from a salutogenic model, but you can get on there and adjust a baby. But even this weekend, I learned some new things that I was like, oh, you never really thought of that before. So yes, it builds confidence, so you could talk to parents, so you can talk to OBs or midwives or pediatricians. And that's, I think, one of the certification will do for you is it gives you the confidence in knowing what you're doing and learning, more about pediatric chiropractic care, and then just building connections to other chiropractors that you can bounce ideas off of. Because, I had somebody come in today, a pregnant lady, and she had switched to me because the chiropractor she was going to doesn't do Webster Technique unless the baby's breech. And I'm like, luckily someone told her, you got to get adjusted. You don't wait. Why would you wait? But that's the kind of thing that the program, I think, can teach, is giving you the confidence that you can help someone throughout their entire pregnancy, or a baby, whether they're, 2 weeks old, 2 hours old, or, 2 years old. Just helping these babies grow and adapt and develop, and knowing what's ahead and what's the best thing to do for them, and what's, common and normal, and, allowing them the best expression of them possible. So that's what it will teach you in any pediatric seminar, without being too symptom focused, because a baby's not just a little person, but it's really different, right? It is different. So,
well, and so, if someone, if this is a weak area in their training and they want to really grow their knowledge in both prenatal care and pediatrics overall, what would be your primary recommendation for them?
I think they should take the Webster Technique for one. Get certified. But there's people who take it just for the certification and then they don't do anything with it, which I hate. But that's going to happen anywhere. But then Ron Castellucci has a class that he teaches, and it's really like pediatric adjusting. Like, this is how you analyze a baby. John Edwards has a class for the ICPA. We call it Advanced Webster. So it's just a little bit above and beyond. Armin Rossi has a class, although he is retiring. So there's different classes depending on what you want to take. And then Linda Slack has a great class for the ICPA, which is all about how to do an infant exam, right? She's got her diplomate in neurology. So she covers infant reflexes. And I remember I was, Alex, our son, was really little, and she came down and did an exam on him, and she found stuff that I hadn't even thought about looking at. And I was like, oh, I felt horrible. I'm like, oh, what a bad mom. But it's like opening your eyes to something new in teaching those things. And it is ultimately helping the babies. So, they have some great classes. But it's, a lot of them, the good and the bad with COVID is some of them are online now, that you can take them online. Some of them you really have to be in person. So, but any of those classes are going to be good. And, it's just having that community of like-minded people who want to focus on pediatrics and prenatal care is one of the best things, I think, that the ICPA will offer. So that's my biased answer.
Excellent. And, you may or may not know this yet, because we are several months, 5 months, 4 months out from Mile High. What do you know what you're going to be sharing from the stage?
I don't. No, that's not true. I want to talk about pregnancy, and I want to talk about it from a salutogenic model. And I want to talk about, I think, a little bit about, I always say, the myths of chiropractic, because literally this lady, pregnant woman today, was like, oh, my chiropractor doesn't do Webster until 36 weeks. And you only do Webster if the baby's breech, and you only do, what I mean? And that's all, just like the world changes, things have changed and it's evolved. So I want to cover, I think we're going to have to, some of the myths, some of the old things and the new things, and what Webster is, and how you can empower these moms throughout their pregnancy, and really to give them the best adjustment possible. So that's kind of what I'm throwing around now, but I got to get some feedback from you before. But, it's going to be
all of that's going to be important for people.
Right.
And hopefully it spurs the ones that, one gives them more information to take care of kids as well as people during pregnancy, but also spurs them to want to delve deeper into this area of study for their practice, so we can all take care of people at a even better than we have before. So
right. Like I know Monique Andrews is one of your speakers, and I talk about her in the Webster seminar because, we talk a little bit about polyvagal theory. And so like, it's even brings in that. I mean, it's so much that you can really help these people. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to adjust their sacrum and rub their stomach and say I'm doing Webster and turn to breech baby, because it's so not that. It's just really evolved to be more than that. So I think that's kind of it. I mean, I tend to get off on a philosophical route every now and then. So I don't know how I'm going to focus it, but that's generally where I am right now. So
well, and hey, we get a little philosophical at Mile High, so that's good. And I for one am so thrilled to have you out to just as part attendee, as an attendee and as a presenter to be there with the Mile High community. It's going to be pretty, this is going to be above 10. It's number 11. So
okay. Well, I'll do my best to entertain people, but educate them too. You got to teach them something, but hopefully motivate people a little bit to be a little bit better. We all can be better at what we do. And if we can just be a little bit better at everything, then the world's going to be a better place. Right. So
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to be on the Mile High podcast, as well as for sharing at Mile High in September of 2023, and I hope everybody's dialed in that date, September 21st, 24. Make sure it's the only place you want to be in September in the chiropractic world. And it's easy to remember the URL. It's riseuptomilehigh.com. So again, Dr. Pamela Stone, thank you so much for all that you do for chiropractic. Is there any last message that you want to share for chiropractors at this particular point?
No, I just would say, just be genuine, be true to yourself, focus on chiropractic, and don't give in to all the crazy people that are out there. I think we just got to, fight for who we are. And Jeannie Ohm had a saying, maybe, I don't know if I should keep quiet on it yet, but, just talking about being the ones who are stepping up and making a difference versus waiting for other people to make decisions for us. Because when people make decisions for us, sometimes bad things happen. And that's especially right now where we are in the past few years. So want people to keep fighting and working hard and being true to themselves, and go to Mile High in September.
Yeah, that's one way to step up. It's a little higher altitude.
Good point. No pun intended. Thank you.
And thank you. And everybody who's listening and our Mile High listeners, make sure you hit subscribe, and you never want to miss any Mile High ticket. Keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.